My guest, Julie, wanted her husband to change to make her happy, and he just wouldn't. Life was throwing them some pretty big curveballs, and their connection was very strained. But then Julie started experimenting with the six intimacy skills, and today her marriage is just what she wanted all along: peaceful, fun, and strong. She's going to tell us what she did so you can do it too. Julie, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Laura, thank you so much for having me.
Tell us what things were like in the bad old days of your marriage.
Yeah, so my story is a long saga for sure. We'll just give you the highlights, but and the lowlights. But yeah, my husband and I met over 20 years ago in a small Bible college in the Pacific Northwest. And we were just so bright-eyed and passionate about everything. And we thought we were going to take on the world and change the world. And we got together pretty quickly. We were married within a year. And we moved to the middle of the United States, which I didn't even know it was in the middle of the United States, to take his first position as a pastor. And I thought, this is my dream. We're going to really help people, and we're going to follow God. And I really was so excited and optimistic about our life. And we started having kids pretty early on. And, something happens when you have kids. It really is a squeeze on life. It just stretches all of your limits. And, I was pretty unskilled at that point. I thought I knew the right way to do really everything. I knew how to make things better. And I just always wanted things to be better. So I really made sure my husband knew how to do it better. And he did a lot of throwing up his hands in those early days. Okay, you change the diapers. Okay, you fold the towels. Okay. And pretty soon, I was doing all the things at home, and he was running off to save the world and really be this heroic figure in our community. And he was winning there, but he was failing at home, because he'd always come home and I'd just be like, I need more, help me, make me happy, I'm drowning here. Right. Yeah. So, that was the beginning of part of the battle days. I still was just, I think it just was how it was for most people. I thought, well, it's just be how it is for most people, and I remember being completely and utterly blindsided when he sat across from me on the bed and told me he'd had an affair. It was just, it was literally just the last thing that I had anticipated being able to happen to us, because I felt like well, I don't even have to explain. You should think, oh, this is not something pastors should do, but apparently this is not a small, uncommon thing. And I just didn't think it was going to happen to me. I just really didn't. Yeah.
Right. So it feels like a layer of protection that he's a godly man. You share these same values. You met at a Bible college. He would never. And so for him to then confess this to you, and was that his initiative he just decided he better?
No, he was caught, and so it was well, tell her, someone else will, which is the story of most people who are stuck and trapped in something that they, didn't intend to get into, and there they are.
Right.
So,
but your world is shattered at this point.
It was, and it was shattered in multiple ways. Some people who face an affair, they can do it privately, but such a public role, you don't get that luxury of suffering privately. It was very public. Our life was complete meltdown, and ironically, during his great fall, right there when it all came out, I had decided not to make any decisions right away. I had decided to just listen to see what God wanted me to do, which is nobody understood at the time.
No. This. I mean, that sounds. You're an outlier, Julie. So, where did you find that wisdom?
Honestly, at the time, I don't know. Because I think I would have been one of the same people who'd said, like, oh, I know what you should do in that situation. I thought I knew, and everyone else thought they knew too. But there's some pains that, like, you just don't know what you're going to do till you're in that moment. And for me, I was destroyed. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I thought that I just didn't know what was true. I didn't know, I didn't know what was true at that time. And it was really a really dark time. We had to move in with his parents because, of course, he lost his job, his dignity. And that week that everything had come out, he had slipped and fallen on the stairs at our home. I promise I didn't push him. But
who could blame you?
Right. But I remember just like slow motion him falling on the floor, like he slipped on the last stair, and he had to have spinal fusion that week, the week that everything came out. And so he was just late. He had both a literal fall and a figurative fall in every way. And he was just laid out. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't fix it. He was just completely broken. Yeah. And so we moved in with his parents on the East Coast. I'd never lived on the East Coast, but we took our 2 small children with us, and started the process of trying to heal from that. At that time we had, we found a new church that was super supportive and actually had some good teaching about love and respect that was somewhat helpful at that time. And we really did heal from that trauma, I felt like, at the time. But life has a way of, like, bringing new storms. And I just remember that when we moved, it was when I began to take on all of the burden of rebuilding our life, because he was physically incapable for a long period of time. I had to go get a full-time job. I worked night shift for almost a year. And I just remember it being just this blur of trying to sleep at the right times and be awake at the right times for my kids. And it was so exhausting. And I just was becoming more and more of the martyr in that. And of course I was unhappy because it was awful.
It was awful.
Yeah, it was exhausting. But
very little self-care at that time.
No. And we muscled through somehow. And we did have some community. Yeah. But I definitely at that time picked up all the things, like, oh, I've got to keep this family together. I've got to fix this. I've got to repair what's broken. I've got to be a good mom, and that's where, the superwoman started to grow. The weight started to get heavier. And then even those things, we kind of had good seasons where it felt pretty good. There was still always, like, those moments where there was just this battle. If I remember telling him at different times, like, I'm not your opponent. I don't know why you think I'm your opponent. Like, I'm on your side. But he felt like that was so insightful to me now, that he felt like I was his opponent. Something about the way I was showing up was adversarial to him. So we went into another season where we really got squeezed when he lost his job. And unexpectedly, he'd been working for a nonprofit and really loved it, but it just transitioned into something else. And so he was unemployed for over a year. And it was a good opportunity for Superwoman Julie to get bigger and stronger and smarter. And I did, we built a small business together. But I was already working a full-time office job. So I was working 2 jobs and being a mother.
And your kids. Yeah.
And I was, killing it. And, I really, I was like really proud of how strong, smart and capable I was. And at the same time, my resentment for him was growing as well. And
this is interesting. I want to just pause here for a minute, because I really relate to this idea of, like, killing it. I remember feeling the same way. Like, there's some satisfaction in that martyrdom, or like the sense of accomplishment. Like, I am really getting all this stuff done here, and I'm doing well. That is a kind of a, I don't know, I guess let's say a temptation or a satisfaction that you probably kind of needed at that time too, right? Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I mean, and it was what kept me going. I think, it was what kept me going. That, like, well, this is, just what you have to do when you have to do it, because he had ongoing chronic back pain, and he couldn't do certain kinds of jobs like bending, lifting, twisting. So I was right there to step in and be super helpful. And the more that I stepped in, the more that I had feedback, the more that I had a better idea, he went back to that posture of like throwing up his hands,
Yeah. Like,
which was
okay.
familiar. It was familiar.
Yeah. It's familiar. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I get it. It's just very relatable. Like it's proof that you're so strong, right? Like this crisis happens and you step in. I mean, I just think you're not the only one, right? And I'm not the only one that responded in this way to life's curveballs. So,
Yeah.
okay. But, all right. So you're filling in again. You're superwoman again. And what
Mhm.
happened?
Yeah. So I just really remember a couple years into building this small business, which I actually really loved and was, like I said, killing it. I started just feeling that familiar feeling of disconnection, of that opponent feeling, and that just sense that it's got to get better than this. I started having a lot of thoughts like, sometimes I just hate you, which is just it's none of us want to admit that we think that sometimes, but I thought that at moments, and it was over not even things that he'd terribly done. It was just him not being like doing what I say and being how I wanted him to be, which whatever that was, making me happy. I just thought, I'm not happy. It must be his fault, right?
I love that you admit that because, yeah, I think we've all thought it, and especially when you're so miserable.
Yeah.
And he's right there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it was. And I think that like kind of the pivotal moment that felt like this, I don't know, I was stuck between this, is this as good as it gets? And the frustration that everything I tried, reading books or, just all the common knowledge and wisdom. I did take him to marriage counseling. I think we need to go to marriage counseling. I did that. Definitely did that. And it was fine. I mean, the lady was nice. It wasn't like awful, but it
Didn't do
wasn't
damage. So that's
no,
good.
it
Yeah.
just wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful. And it didn't move the needle at all. And so we just stopped doing it. And I could see the defeat on my husband, like that nothing he did was going to matter. So he just stopped trying. And I remember we went on this vacation. He took us on a beautiful vacation. He actually did tons of lovely things for our family, tons of lovely things. But I was like,
Those don't count. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. I get it. I get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he took us on this vacation, and I to Mexico with a family. And I just remember he was super focused on winning as a dad because he couldn't win with me. So he was running around, like doing all these things, taking him to the beach. But I remember just feeling like invisible, like he just wasn't even trying to please me. I couldn't see that it was because I wasn't really very pleasable. So I just like ran around, like trying to chase behind the family. And I remember one night I asked him, through tears, do you still love me? And I just really felt that like, he doesn't even love me anymore. And I remember he was like, Julie, I'll try harder. Like, I'll try harder to show you love me, and, and that was still, I felt so helpless. So, yeah. So we went home from that vacation, and I remember it was within like maybe a week of returning from that vacation and that kind of low moment where I just felt so helpless. I had hosted a women's small group at my house for church, and there was a new lady who had come that I didn't know very well. And we stayed after and chatted for a while. And we talked for a long time because we kind of connected. And I said, oh, marriage is hard sometimes, is what I said. And she goes, you know what? I used to think so too. And she said, I read this book that really helped me to learn some skills and practices that have really changed my marriage. And then she said the line, she says, I don't know if you're in the place to hear it, but
What?
it was helpful to me. Yeah. Which was like a challenge, right? Like,
It's like, So tempting. I'm like, well, what is it? Let me
Right,
at it.
right. And so,
being the superwoman that you are, right? Like,
so I took that as a personal challenge, of course.
Yeah.
And she had been very appealing in her way of being, that it spoke to me that, oh, well, I'll check it out. So, so I downloaded the book on Audible, and I listened to it on double speed in a day and a half. That's my way. Yeah.
Right. Maybe. No time. Let's
right.
get this done. Yeah. I love it. And this is The Empowered Wife.
I think the original one I listened to was First Kill All the Marriage Counselors.
Yeah. Okay, which is now
which at the moment appealed to me. I get it. Like I get it.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So that's the original I listened to. But so I was like, so I listened, and there were a number of parts I was like, well, I don't know about that. But there were a couple things I was like, well, I could experiment. So later that week I had an opportunity to experiment. My husband had decided to remodel the laundry room, and I had literally 100 other projects that were more important, moneymaker projects for him to work on. And, the laundry room was like behind a door. Like nobody sees that.
Who cares? Right?
Who cares?
Not that one.
Yeah. So I decided to experiment with relinquishing inappropriate control. And I just said, whatever you think about everything that he did with that project. Normally, I would have inserted myself in just about every way, probably taken over the project and finished it myself, and then resented it.
I love that, Julie.
Yeah.
I relate too.
But really, really.
Yeah.
So I didn't. I just went about my business. I let him do it. There are a few moments where he asked for my help with this or that, and I just offered it with no commentary, no direction or correction or criticism. And he, at the end of the weekend, he said, Julie, you were so nice to me this weekend.
Oh.
and that was the moment I knew that there was something here, and that I was missing it. I had been missing it. It was just a huge blind spot to me, that this is the way he'd been seeing me, that I was not nice. I was being something else to him. And
you just didn't know. You never knew. No one ever.
I couldn't see. I was so overwhelmed, fixated on other things. And I wasn't taking good care of myself at all. I was, just running around ragged. So I was, of course, unhappy. Yeah.
So he finishes this laundry room, and you, without your comment, and then he says, "You're so nice." And you probably were happy about this laundry room too. I bet you were.
You know what? It was beautiful. And that was the other skill I brought to it, was expressing gratitude. The only thing I contributed was gratitude. And wow. I think before I had this idea that, like, well, why should I be say thank you for things that should just be status quo, right?
Oh, status quo. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Right. Or just
he should be he should be remodeling the laundry room, right? Yeah.
The project I wanted.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. He actually should have been doing 10 other projects, but whatever. I did that one. Fine. Yeah. I'm not going to throw him a parade, right?
Yeah. So I really did just express gratitude. And I remember it had this, he even ordered this vinyl sticker to put on the back. It was this lovely light blue laundry room. And it says, "Laundry, the never ending story," which is just so, so fun and funny, which is who he is. And I just only expressed gratitude. And that was definitely the big shift in things for us, was that the start of a big shift for us as I began to just experiment more and more. Yeah.
Wow. And so you got to see your husband probably feeling proud that he pleased his wife. And then it's kind of a full circle to that moment on the vacation, was like, "Do you still love me?" And you could see that he did all this for you, kind of thing, even though
trying all along.
He'd been trying all along. Yeah. And so his love was evident in that moment. You kind of, that is a That's a beautiful story. I just love the transformation from really you're totally taking a different approach. You probably had to bite your tongue a bunch of times while he was doing
Oh,
that one,
yeah.
right? Like you had a lot of things you could have said,
Mhm.
but you managed to not say them. And it sounds like you felt better for it too.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
More dignified for sure.
More dignified, right? Yeah. And so, and then you felt more hopeful about the prospects for your marriage, it sounds like.
Yep. Yep. So I went on for probably the next 6 months. I just had the book and me and my little friend that I just made,
Your new friend.
and
Yeah.
she wasn't a coach or anything. She was just a woman who had read the book somewhere along the line and implemented some of the skills and seen some transformation for her. So we kind of were, accountability buddies. And if I couldn't hold it in, I'd talk to her about it instead, because I knew she'd stand for me. And
Yeah.
probably 6 months later, I had, a plateau like most people do. At that point, I was like, well, maybe I better like order the new book and listen to it on single speed or something. And, and yeah, so I went and reread the book again, and I really started to have this sense that this was for me, but this was also for so many of the women in my life that were suffering too. And, I'd watched so many marriages go by the wayside in recent years and actually a lot of people had confided in me that had dealt with infidelity in their marriages, because who do you talk to about it except for the people who it was broadcast everywhere. And probably 20 people had over the course of those years reached out to us in their lowest moments when they had dealt with infidelity. And I remember feeling like I could give them empathy, but I didn't have a whole lot more to give them. And I really started to sense that I wanted to be able to give them more than just like, well, I mean, this is kind of what worked for me. I don't know if it'll work for you. And that's when I started looking into the coach training program, and was able to, that was a whole nother step for me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about that.
So I guess like one of the good stories is, how I went about it. Honestly, I didn't even know about all of the other programs you guys had. I didn't know about like the Diamond Pro. I didn't know about the group coaching. I didn't know any of that, because I was just like, oh, let me get on the website and see about getting some more stuff. And I was like, oh, I have coach training. Yeah.
Yeah. I just go right to the top.
Yeah. So I, did a discovery call for the coach training, and I just was so sure that this was my path. I was so sure. And when I looked at the price tag, I was not as sure.
It's a big investment.
Because it's a big investment, which told me too, this is not just like a little like weekend training. Like this is an actual, like going to college for a year kind of.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah. So I remember the person who did my discovery call, kind of taught me how to express my desire about it to my husband in an aspiring way. And I was like, well, I guess I can see what happens. Right.
Right. So, might as well try.
Yeah. And he didn't even know I was doing this whole thing. He didn't know I'd been doing anything this whole time.
He knew nothing about the book or the friend or the skills. Nothing.
And so I
what did he think? Wait, what did he think was going on? Like, because he could probably tell a difference.
I was being nice.
You were being nice. Okay, cool. I love it. All right.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. So I was like, gosh, this is going to broadside him that I want to spend all this money on a training for a thing. Like, there's no way he's going to go for this. And so I expressed my desire, said, hey, I've been doing some training on this marriage resource that I really think is great. It's really helped me out this year to make some changes in the way I'm showing up our marriage. And I want to learn how to coach other women. And I'd love to be able to do it. And actually, I sent it in an email because I sent it in an email because I was too chicken. But
I love it.
It was, and I know him. He needs time to like think about something. He doesn't like to be broadsided with a yes or no question.
Right.
Especially today.
So it wasn't just that you were chicken. It was also that you were wanting to give him, you were being
Yes,
respectful. It sounds
I
like
was.
trying to give
Yes.
him the room. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't want to get defensive if he, because his man way of things sometimes is like is initially no, and then he'll think about it, and then he'll be like, well, and I don't like the initial no feeling. So
Oh, no, no one likes that. Yeah.
he loves, conflict, right? So anyway, so I sent them in the email. I said, I'd love to, hear what you think. And so later that week, he said, hey, so let's talk about this training thing. And he asked how much it was. And I told him. He said, oh.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I don't know. I always think it's a good thing to get more education. And I think it might be kind of weird if you were like, oh, and then I'm going to get another job and, it's going to be this whole thing. But I think if you want to add to your education, I think we should do it. Just no questions.
Were you blown
He didn't have,
away?
no,
You
he
just,
didn't have
you
any
fall out of your
questions.
chair?
Yeah, just about. I was like, okay. And then it was back on me to decide, okay, is this really what I want to do?
Yeah.
And I did. I really did want to. And there were some areas I still wanted some breakthrough on. And there was a lot of the training program that is kind of an opportunity to get super, super, super support to get those final breakthroughs, which I felt like I was able to get clarity on too.
Yeah. So you enrolled yourself, which must have been kind of scary to sign up for coach training.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if it was at that point. Honestly, I didn't even know I'm a little bit that way. Like, super women type people. Sometimes we jump into stuff like,
you're like, I'll figure it out later.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
did you have what happened in coach training for you?
Oh, it was so lovely. Honestly, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't even know about the group coaching program. I didn't know anything about any of that. So, first thing before coach training started, they said, oh, well, here's access to the group training program. You can, and I remember the first one that I got on, I thought, oh gosh, I hope I'm not the only one. I on the group training, I get it, and there's like 60 plus women. On these group training, on these
some
group
of them have hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I listen and some lady brings a challenge and I'm like, oh, how are they going to, oh, that's a challenge, and by the end, of this short call, they'd really given her hope and a next step. And I thought, wow, I like this is why I'm here. I want to be able to do that. And it was just a year of training that was such a great opportunity to stretch and grow, to practice and practice and practice with my partner coaches and build such a safe environment to grow into a coach, which is also, that is scary. I will say that. It is. It's vulnerable to put myself out there and my story and not know, how it's going to be received or if it's going to be understood, because I know that not everybody has understood my choices at the lowest spots. They think they know what they would do, and not everybody will be able to accept the help that I have to offer either. But I don't know. I've just really relinquishing control to the whole new level, right? I can't control that. I can just offer what I have, which is my story and my transformation and my way of being. And I think that's appealing to people.
Oh, definitely. It's, your vulnerability is so attractive. It's so appealing. I feel it right now. Like I feel your magnetism, like I feel connected to you from your vulnerability. How did your marriage change in coach training?
Yeah. As I've been thinking about that question all week, because my husband did change, but only in the ways he was responding to me, I think. The man was there, and I just had to give him some room. I just had to give him some room to be the man that I married, to make amends for, all the things that he his mere mortal decisions as well that he wanted to make amends for. He wanted to be the man that I was giving him the space to be, which is he's a brave, wise, loving man, who's a wonderful father. And now I really feel like we're on the same team. We're on the same team. We're not fighting against each other in this invisible, fictitious war. We're just standing for each other's dreams and each other's projects, because he's doing all these things, traveling and doing all these heroic things, and I'm proud of him. And I don't have to second guess him. I don't have to make it better. He can do it. So yeah, I just really feel like we're on the same team. We're connected, and which is what I wanted this whole time, but I just had to stop trying to do it manually.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a funny, playful guy. I just needed to step into it and start taking care of myself. Self-care, of course, for me was a big change. This year has been an exploration of all the different kinds of self-care, really asking what's still missing, what's still out of whack, where do I need to say I can't more, where do I need to let go of the guilt of certain things, or express my desire in an inspiring way for something new. One win story for the year. I had been, working full time and this other job, right? And I didn't want to work so much. I wanted to have more flexibility in my schedule, and I had expressed that to my husband too. And he, was looking for ways to make it happen, and experimenting with things to try to make it happen. But eventually, I expressed to my manager, oh, I'd love to have more flexibility in my schedule. And he's like, well, let me look into that, basically. And in the end, I was able to transition to a part-time remote situation. And I know. And so now I just feel like I know how to take care of myself. I know what I want. I can take each day as it comes. My marriage is just what marriage is supposed to be, my soft place to land, my place to get support and encouragement and affection and love. And I really feel like I'm actually winning now.
Wow. Wow. That's okay. So I just go back to that moment. It was a little moment, right? In the hotel room where you're like, do you even love me?
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like that's your question anymore. That's not even your question. There's no so it sounds like you feel loved. You feel loved and adored.
I do.
Yeah. And you did that. You did that. You did it single-handedly. I give you all the credit, right, Julie? This was, it wasn't going to just happen. You weren't just going to arrive there. You took some specific actions, things that took a lot of courage, from the first experiment you did with the laundry room, right? It was scary. And then expressing your desire for coach training, and then expressing your desire to your manager for more flexibility in your schedule. And look what you've created. It's, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, give us a little more of a glimpse of what your marriage is like now. How would you just, you did a beautiful job describing it just now as your soft place to land, but tell us some more about that.
Yeah. So, so I will say that life still has challenges, right?
It does.
Life still has challenges. And the biggest difference to me is that in the way we face those challenges, as a team, he's been, here, I'll tell you another story. So right when the war broke out in Ukraine, my husband really showed up with his real hero gene. And we attend a church that has a lot of Ukrainian members. And so they were very intimately connected to the struggle there. And they had some people that they were connected with in Ukraine reach out for help. And my husband came to me and said, I think I need to go. And this was just a couple weeks after the war had broken out. And
last February or something.
Yeah. It was right after it had broken out. And I remember being filled with fear. and
Yeah.
and I said, whatever you think.
Oh,
Like, that's all I
oh,
said. And I trusted him to to know if it was what he needed to do. And he
oh,
did. He went and he's been really connected with some initiatives over there with his strategic skills and things, and really providing hope and help to people who are really struggling in a lot of ways over there. But I'm just so proud of him, and I didn't have to control it. I didn't have to question him, and it enabled him to just be more of the man that I know he is. And it empowered him too, honestly, in a way, to do more in the world. And I didn't do that. I'm not going to do that. But for me to be behind him enabled him to do more, and that's been kind of an ongoing saga, but of just one sliver of our life, of things that are hard and challenging. And, I feel like we're kind of back to that bright-eyed couple, who wanted to change the world and wanted to make a difference and didn't want to just sit back, wanted to really be helpful and provide hope to people who are suffering. And it'll keep being that way, but we're in it together. So it just feels really good.
Julia, yeah, that is super inspiring. It makes me cry. It makes me cry because I really hear that you're both living your purpose in the world.
Yeah.
You are contributing just the way you always imagined you would,
Yeah.
and weren't able to for a while.
Yeah.
But now you can. It feels really good. It's just a joy to see it, to hear your story. Yeah, great
Thank you for the
job.
opportunity
Great
to tell it.
job. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and how do you think this has affected your kids?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. So that's another story. Yeah. So we went into, I think I told you, well, no, maybe I didn't say, but I remember thinking when all the COVID shutdowns happened, it's like, oh, well, I'll get to go home and be at home and then I can fix everything. And it's going to make things better because I won't be at work all the time. Of course, it just got way worse because I was just there to micromanage and be controlling all the time.
Wherever you
So
went, there you were, right?
yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of a build up to the breakdown for sure, which now I'm grateful for because, you can't have a breakthrough if you can't have that breakdown, right?
It was the breakdown before the breakthrough. Yeah.
It was. Yeah. But at that same time, I have two teenagers right now, and they dealt with all the shutdowns differently. One of them didn't like it, but she dealt with it. The other one really, really struggled. And had a lot of, and I think a lot of women could probably relate to this, had a lot of mental health struggles that manifested from that whole experience for whatever all the reasons were and contributing factors. And we were, of course, in our most tense time, which I know magnified it. I know that even if we weren't like yelling and screaming in front of them, they know, they feel it, they feel the tension, they feel the disconnection. They're not stupid. Kids know.
Yeah.
And I know it contributed to her anxiety, which has been something to come to terms with for me, that I contributed something to her struggle, which is it's a tough thing,
Beautiful accountability. Yeah. Heartbreaking. I hear it.
Yeah. But I remember as we went along through a long series of trying to be a good parent to a child struggling with mental health issues and breakdowns and really scary stuff. I remember I got to the point where I had no idea what to do. I had no idea. I don't know, And I remember as I was first with the skills that I just was vulnerable with him. I don't know. And at one point he said, I think we need to homeschool our daughter. And I said, I think you're right, but I know I can't. And he said, well, then I'll do it. And inside, I thought, that's never going to work. You guys are too much alike. You're going to argue the whole time. This is going to be awful. I thought all of those things. I had all of those fears, right? And instead of just saying any of those things, I did not. I just duct taped. I did not say any of those fears. And I just said, whatever you think. And I let him create a way to homeschool my daughter and manage all of it, all of it. And he has been the best stabilizing factor for my daughter to create this environment for her to be safe, to work through all of this, turmoil within. And he has been so heroic in the way he's done it. And he, I know he stuffs down all those frustrations that, when you're dealing with kids and teenagers, that you want to just be like, oh my gosh, just do what I say.
Right.
But he has been able to show up so much differently because he didn't have another person attacking him in the process. I was supporting him in the process. And it was a totally different experience than I had imagined the worst case would be. And it's really made a huge difference for both of my children and where they are now. They're both, of course, facing the challenges that all human beings do. But I know, I really have a sense that they know that their parents love each other, they're on the same team, they're standing for their children, and that they can come to us about anything, and that we'll stand with them too. So it's a huge difference. And I'm glad I got to tell that story. Thank you for asking, because I think a lot of women can probably, unfortunately, relate. Yeah.
That's a very inspiring story also, because I really hear the fear was right there. The default, the old Julie kind of.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you were so courageous. You chose to trust him, even though, that didn't seem reasonable at all. You chose your faith over your fear. It's just a perfect example of doing that. And now you're living the dream, right? And this is so healing for your mama heart, I'm sure, because you're seeing both of your daughters thrive. It sounds like from. Whew. So that's a very encouraging story also. What is your tip for somebody who is where you were, where it's just not feeling loved, feeling so miserable, he won't try. It's, you're just kind of, it's just, life is just there's a drudgery. There was a drudgery, I think, to the marriage previously, and she wants what you have now, where it's a soft place to land, and the marriage feels strong, and they're living their purpose, and their kids are thriving. And there's just connection. What's your tip for her?
Yeah. Wow, that's such a good question. Aside from, of course, like, here, read this book. I don't know if you're ready for it, which I say a lot now.
Yeah.
It's
a good line.
Beyond that, because I could give the book to someone, and if they can't be open and teachable to experiment, it's going to be lost on them. And I think it has been lost on some people. And I know people are in different situations. I had a deep conviction that I needed to stay. I needed to work through things. I had a deep conviction of that. And I think that women who are drawn to this work have some sort of that as well. And so being open and teachable, being willing to look at your blind spots and accept accountability, I think is just absolutely the essential tip. Being willing to see the ugliness or just the ignorance in yourself and myself, I think is what makes transformation possible. And regardless of what the outcomes are, because, life is complicated and storms happen and people have their own autonomy, regardless of that, to be committed to changing myself and being the person I really want to be and be standing in my purpose. Yeah.
I have to say, Julie, you do make that seem kind of easy. And I just know it's not. It's not easy to just take that unvarnished look at the ways you're showing up that are not ideal.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you get yourself to do that?
Um, how did I get myself to do it? uh, you know, I think there's something in most women that doesn't want to settle. I didn't want to settle for mediocre. I didn't want to settle for this is as good as it gets. Um, and even all the other things I tried were attempts to fix it, right? Because I knew it could be better, and I knew that it could change. And if I have that much effort for that, like I have enough effort to work on myself and to be open. And I think that's, yeah, I mean, of course, I have to say that my faith has of course played a big role in the darkest times, and those times when you don't want to look at yourself. The humility of just realizing that I am a mere mortal, and I can't do it all on my own. But that humility, I think, is key. I think the humility of it, just to be, that I don't have to have it all, but I can want it all.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's part of you is wanting to have it all. And that's served you well in this journey, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if you could go back and talk to Julie from before and tell her what you know now? What do you think you
Ooh.
would say?
Oof. Yeah. What would I tell Julie before? Um, you don't have to do it all. It's it's not all on you. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to fix it all. Just take it one day at a time, one step at a time. Yeah, it's going to be okay. It's going to get better. There's hope.
Give her some encouragement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
I like that. Because as you speak of like the women who are attracted to this work, right? There is tremendous commitment, right? You had tremendous commitment to your marriage through an affair and through this tedious time of general misery. Like none of that shook you out of your marriage, which is incredible. But some part of you had hope too.
Yeah.
You had some hope, and even if it's just a little tiny bit of hope, right? Everybody needs that.
Yeah.
And so it's just very gratifying to be here and hear, the incredible outcome that you created out of that. Just like little trace of hope, where wherever it was, and whatever it was, and I hear that's what you would have said to yourself, like there's hope, and here we are, taking a victory lap. In fact, I would like to give you my wife award. Here it is.
I'll take it. I love
Best
it.
wife, best wife. Congratulations. It's no small accomplishment. It's a huge accomplishment. You saved your family. Maybe you were never going to be divorced, Julie. Kind of doesn't sound like you were ever going to be divorced.
Just miserable. Yeah.
But just miserable, right? Right. But instead, we have a transformation of a whole family, 4 people who are thriving and happy and living their purpose and doing well in the world. And you're just a beacon of hope of what's possible. So I feel very inspired getting to hear this whole story. I'm so grateful, couldn't be more grateful for your authenticity and sharing it with all of us.
Thank you, Laura, for the opportunity. Means a lot.
Beautiful job. Thank you.